Hello, my name is Paul Marchbanks, and this is Digging in the Dirt, with a few more words on representations of disability in Hollywood films. Today I'm going to talk about A Patch of Blue, a film directed by Guy Green and released in 1965. And I'm going to get the ball rolling with a more personal angle than I normally insert into these talks. I opened my eyes on the world in Idaho, an unabashedly conservative state these days, and spent my first decade in its western neighbor, Washington, now classed as one of the more liberal states in our country. As a child, I did not think in terms of red or blue, elephant or donkey, nor did I pay much attention to class and race. Some of my friends occupied less property than we did. My parents maintained 3 separate gardens and 6 fruit trees, and others lived in what felt like mansions to my inexperienced eyes. My sister and I participated in the YMCA's Indian Guides and Indian Princesses with our dad. These programs, conceived to strengthen father-child bonds and improve intercultural understanding, have since been canceled as flagrant, insensitive examples of cultural appropriation. At the time, I had no practical, lived understanding of the ways cultural differences could lead to civil division. I learned a few things in social studies, of course, but racism seemed to me an outmoded artifact of the past. To my young mind, friends were friends. Any distinctions I made had more to do with the ethics of the soccer field or fairness when playing marbles. Sometimes I wonder whether my limited perspective in those years was solely a product of youthful naivete and had little to do with environment. Then, of course, I remember the rude awakening I had upon moving to Clinton, Tennessee when I was 11 years old. Clinton is an amazing little city in many ways. I have plenty of fond memories of our church, hours spent with school choirs and swim teams, weekly forays into the local cards and comic shop, and rare outings on the Clinch River. I still can't imagine a better neighborhood than Hidden Hills, with its steep slopes perfect for sledding, and those surrounding woods which called to the adventurer in me. I learned pretty quickly, however, that the town had a history of division, providing current residents a number of poisons among which they could pick. During desegregation, years earlier, a federal judge had ordered the high school to integrate with all deliberate speed, making it one of the first school systems in the state to introduce teenagers of color into the student body. In December of 1956, the white minister of First Baptist Church was severely beaten after escorting 12 black students to school, and 2 years later, the high school was bombed. Apparently, some irate white supremacists placed over 75 sticks of dynamite in 3 locations throughout the building, causing about $300,000 in damage. That's about $3 million in today's currency. No one was bodily injured in the attack, but the psychological wounds to the township had not fully healed when I arrived as a 6th grader just over 20 years later. I stepped into a self-segregating school system, a division inscribed at every grade level in the cliquishness of recess and lunchtime, and sometimes reflected in who took which classes. My own recollections are necessarily narrow. I speak for no one beside my white middle-class self, but it seems as though we could all have done better at integration. Selfishly, I was even more aware of socioeconomic prejudice, as I was sometimes its target. Kids can be cruel, and though I was far from poor, the label was sometimes slapped on me due to my parents' shopping practices. A couple friends in 6th grade loved to mock me for wearing corduroy toughskins instead of Levi's, for wearing generic hoodies instead of members-only jackets, and for having parents reluctant to buy Ocean Pacific shorts, polo shirts, or, wait for it, parachute pants. Those who shopped at Hammer's, a bargain department store, were maligned as white trash. The message was clear: wear name brands or be branded as unworthy. Peers tentative about blatant racism and relatively comfortable with class prejudice proved unabashedly shameless when it came to disability. Students with significant cranial differences were called coneheads. I blame the popular SNL skit of the period, and those in special needs programs provided everyone else a handy other to denigrate from a distance if your self-esteem ever needed an artificial boost. Today, conventional wisdom has it that race, class, and disability, along with gender, religion, sexual orientation, and body type, can interact in ways that amplify each other's stigmatizing impact. Academics like to call this intersectionality, though I prefer the metaphor of a web. Things that intersect pass one another quickly, like cars darting under green lights in urban thoroughfares. A reverberation in a single strand of a web, by contrast, most definitely affects the others. They work together to catch their victims. However you look at it, the idea is that some individuals have difficulty escaping crisscrossing forms of disenfranchisement that effectively immobilize them. Guy Green's A Patch of Blue appeared in theaters in 1965, the year after passage of that Civil Rights Act which outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Like many films starring Sidney Poitier in the 60s, it works to counter racial prejudice by spotlighting the kind intelligence of someone likely to be marginalized due to skin color, a character unwilling to respond with either physical or verbal violence when treated unjustly. Gordon Ralph has plenty of opportunities to exercise his patience. First, when stared at by women who silently denounce his friendship with the young and white Selena Darcy, and later, when assaulted by a racist mother. His brother, a medical intern whose own experience with prejudice has soured him on race relations, pointedly refuses to share Gordon's idealistic outlook. Though the film shares features of literary naturalism, a deterministic storytelling mode that depicts humanity's desperate struggles to survive, it counters its opening pessimism in a few noteworthy ways. Like Stephen Crane's Maggie, a Girl of the Streets, or some one-act play by Eugene O'Neill, A Patch of Blue focuses on the challenges of the working poor living in tenement housing, conditions that too often spawn alcoholism, prostitution, violence, and in this case, disability. Instead of updating the paradigm of white plight to underscore the challenges faced by Black Americans, as one might expect, the tale configures the character of color as a potential savior, not a victim. Even more surprising, it suggests that in certain circumstances, disability itself might lay a groundwork for relationship by undermining instead of enabling prejudice. I won't delve into spoilery detail, but allow me to close by pointing to a relevant scene in another story about prejudice, Mary Shelley's novel, Frankenstein. The imposing creature stitched together from corpses has had consistently negative experiences with everyone he's met when he happens upon a reclusive family in the countryside whose aging patriarch is blind. The creature bides his time until the old man is alone, and then approaches him in hopes that the latter's vision impairment will allow for the kind of connection thwarted by others' physiognomic prejudices. For a few precious moments, he stands in the presence of someone incapable of assessing his poor clothing, his gargantuan height, or that broken skin which often fails to cover the muscles beneath. Mr. de Lacy's blindness constitutes a kind of promise to react to what the creature says, not the way he looks. Guy Green, a recent expat from Britain who directed A Patch of Blue from his own screenplay, does not want his American audience to class his own story about two folk from different worlds as fantasy fiction. His small-scale tale about a friendship his contemporaries would have considered rather unlikely is granted epic stature by the way he constructs it. Though nearly all films were shot in color by the 60s, Green captures his film in black and white, an aesthetic choice which emphasizes the social tensions of the period. He also uses ultra-wide cinemascope, an aspect ratio of 2.35 to 1, which tends to give films a grandeur that is lacking with more boxy proportions like 4 to 3 or 16 to 9. What do you think? Does Guy Green's tale emphasize one type of equality at the expense of some of the others I've mentioned? Or does this highly decorated film succeed in providing a multi-layered portrait of equity that can still inspire in 21st century America?